Heyo, Luke here, and you're watching.
Watching.
You're not
whatever
watching.
You're listening to whatever this thing's called. What's this called?
Bookends, right?
Bookends.
The show not about books.
Yeah. We should have called it Off the Books, but too late to change it.
Well, now we're on the books because this is we're doing a short story episode because Bookends is just becoming a variety
Again.
show. Again. Yeah. So yeah, I guess we could get started. Welcome, right?
Hey. All right.
Yeah, just
Hi,
jump
everybody.
in.
Sure. We can think of an intro anyway.
I'll cut that up and make it nice, I guess. As nice as I can. Welcome to Bookends. We are reading Ernest Hemingway this month for the main episode. Seeing as he has lots of famous old movies based off of his books, we didn't watch any of those.
Of course.
And instead, we're reading his short stories.
There's plenty, and there's plenty to be found there. A lot of them are really good. And me being a notorious anti-Hemingway, not really anti-Hemingway, but lukewarm.
Hemingway hater.
Nah, I don't hate Hemingway. I'm just kind of lukewarm about Hemingway. But I have some very interesting opinions about this time. For once, I'm agreeing with Pierce, but I'm disagreeing with our other co-host here, Luke.
Yeah, generally, if you're wondering, the opinions on Hemingway in this group, in this 3-person group, is that me and Luke generally like Hemingway for totally different reasons, and Justin does not like Hemingway
because I love purple prose. I love it when it's all poetic and just flowery, but Hemingway's like nah, let's make it as just little as possible because it's the iceberg theory. We should probably explain that a little bit, but iceberg theory basically is less is more. Leave a lot to the imagination, excise any extraneous words, adverbs, indications, etc. So, not my thing. I just really like it when people like to go wild when they're writing.
I will say I do think it's an exaggeration to and that's not just you. I feel like that this is everyone. It's an exaggeration to say Hemingway doesn't use any of those writing.
As much as he could, probably.
Yeah, he doesn't use them as much as he could. He does use those writing techniques, just not. He tried. His point was to not overuse them, so that way the meaning behind your actual. I can't speak. So that way the meaning behind your actual words doesn't get lost in those techniques. Anyhow. So we read The Snows of Kilimanjaro, which is probably one of, if not his most famous short story. And then we also read A Clean, Well-Lighted Place, which is my favorite, and also probably another one of his top, and also probably another one of his top 5 most famous. And then Soldier's Home, which is a lesser known one. It's still known because it's it's Hemingway, but
Underrated.
It's not as well known as the first 2. So I figured we'd jump right in to The Snows of Kilimanjaro. Does anyone want to go over a plot summary of this one?
This guy is just not like his wife. It just, I don't have any summary on hand. We should have probably organized that a little bit earlier, but basically this guy has gangrene in his leg, and I think he's just very bitter towards his wife. And it just cuts back and forth between him being really rude towards his wife. I think this guy's a writer as well. Please help me out here. I don't know the story.
Yes. Okay. So this guy Harry is an author, and he is dying of gangrene in his leg. And his wife Helen is there, and she's trying to be helpful. But in fact, he is very sarcastic, and he's speaking about death as if it's about to happen when she still is holding out hope that there's going to be a plane coming to get him out. And then he's just he gets so frustrated with it that he just starts berating his wife pretty much. Yeah. And so it cuts between scenes of him being oh, I'm dead. What of it? So what? It's over. And his wife being no. And then him
rudely rebuffing.
Rudely rebuffing And then it cuts to his past and different places he's been with his wife, in italicized like parts. And he's lived in a bunch of different places of Europe. It talks about like I think in like Greece or somewhere close by in like Thrace in that area. He gets into like a fight or something. There's basically it kind of is like his downfall almost as like an author, as like an artist. He falls in love with, well, falls in love. He gets with his wife, and she has money, and seems like he's kind of conflicted over whether he really likes her or just really likes the fact that she has money. And then he travels with her, and slowly over time he kind of loses his artistic pursuit, I guess you could put it. And that's why it's kind of revealed that's why they're in Africa, is that he's trying to like come alive again and write again and all that. And then he eventually dies, and there's this weird like dream sequence where he like gets picked up but not really, and then he like turns into a spirit thing, and then he's on top of, isn't he on top of Kilimanjaro or
Yeah,
something?
something like
I
that.
think
Yeah,
he's
he's like
flying over it. Yeah.
square top of Kilimanjaro.
Yeah. And then it cuts back to his wife coming in, and she looks at him and he's like dead in the bed. And then you can hear this like coyote laughing in the
It
distance.
sounds like a human.
Sounds
like that.
human. Yeah. That's pretty much it. I mean, it's, I would still read it. It's a famous short story for a reason, but like this is kind of where I can see people have a problem with iceberg theory. I like Hemingway for the meaning, for being able to tell exactly what's happening and then being able to dig at the meaning. I looked up some of the analysis of this book, and it's very deep. There's something about the Mount of Kilimanjaro being like the house of God,
Oh wow.
and like him traveling there, and that like dream sequence is like him like he was taken there because he found himself again as like an artist, and he like now it's like heaven kind of, it seems. I don't know, it's really weird, and it's not, I don't feel like that meaning is very well
Respected? Like
no, not very well respected. I just mean like
well
I don't
founded?
I don't think it's something that an average reader would be able to
It's a
find
stretch.
reading
Yeah.
through. Yeah. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
it was good. It was well written.
I felt nothing towards it. I mean, like I was interested and knowing what
Mhm.
was gonna happen. The ending was kind of ho hum. Didn't really feel much towards it. It just dragged for a short story. It was really just like, man, another flashback about this guy being really rude towards his wife, and I low key just stopped kind of caring. I mean, I didn't hate it. It's just like I felt indifference towards it. I mean, but Luke, this is your favorite story. Why is this so good to you?
All right, so I don't know. I never really get most of the little iceberg theory bits, but I just thought it was hilarious how this dude is like dying at like he's such a loser. He just starts bitching at his wife as he's dying. He's like, "Fuck you! I hate you! I never loved you! I only got with you because you were rich, you stupid bitch!" And then the wife is just like taking it because she's dying, and it's like, "Oh, what are you gonna do? She's gonna be dead soon." And I like was losing my shit. It was so funny for a bit.
I
Yeah,
Wow.
and then it like then the whole thing came out. It's like, oh yeah, I married you because you were rich. I lost my artistic ambitions, and then we came to Africa so I could get it back. And then I was an idiot
Now
and
I'm dying. Yeah.
dying. Yeah, and I was like, you're an absolute POS, dude. Like complete POS. And I don't know. I thought it was hilarious. Books don't make me like laugh out loud, you know?
Mhm.
This book I like had to stop reading like 3 separate times because I was like I was in shock and I was laughing. I was like, this dude is not giving this girl a break.
Wow.
I
I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, I think some of it is funny, but I also think like that's kind of another reason why I can't really take it as seriously, like the meaning that he's trying to portray. Like it feels like he's trying to say that the thing that this guy is doing is like a great, like he's getting away from the things that was detracting from his art, and that's good.
Mm.
And he dies like a man who, not perfect, but is like doing a good thing and searching for his artistic ambition. Um, but he just seems like a
Pathetic.
like a real jerk.
Yeah.
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 Seems pretentious, really.
Mm-hmm.
But I am surprised because I was wondering what would you find funny in this. I'm just like this guy's kind of. I mean, question. I probably should ask you on that episode. But did you find Kafka funny or tragic? Do you have the same
Definitely
sense of
wasn't
humor?
funny.
Well, Kafka thought it was funny because when he wrote his stories, he was laughing really hard.
Yeah.
So
Apparently.
so I found some humor in it. So I'm just guessing we have some different sense of humor. I guess you find
Yeah.
hilarity and tragedy. I mean, I guess should I bring up that the crime and punishment to you, Pierce?
But I feel like, okay, Crime and Punishment. I've been rereading it. It's morbidly funny. Um, that I feel like that's probably a pretty common opinion. There are some parts in it that are like morbidly funny. Just the situation this guy gets into. Anyways, that's.
Hemingway's hilarious. That's our takeaway.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have that much more to say about this story just because I personally didn't really get it, and I didn't really get the explanation of the analysis
Yeah,
when I looked it up. So,
you can assign your own interpretation to it. We're not
yeah.
going to legislate anything or dictate how you should think it because we don't understand it either. I mean, Luke just thought it was funny.
Yep.
That's all. Um, shall we go to the next story? Unless Luke has another funny joke about this. About this.
Nah, that's about it.
Okay.
All right. Soldier's Home is up next. We go from our author in the last story named Harry to a veteran, a World War One veteran named Harold in this story. So he comes home from World War One. He served. I believe he joined up late, so he got out late.
Mm.
Like he didn't get out at the time that all the other when the war was over, when all the other soldiers got out and came home. And so he comes home kind of on his own, and in 1919, so like a full year after the war is over, or somewhat close to a year at least. And he comes home to Oklahoma. The people in the town don't really care because they've already done this, like welcome home all the soldiers. And the only time that they do care is when he like kind of embellishes the like
Yeah.
the negatives of his
Experience.
time as a
Yeah.
soldier. Yeah. Um, which is not to say I don't think Hemingway ever writes that he like didn't experience anything bad when he was in World War One. He just writes that like he didn't experience anything bad enough that people cared.
Yeah.
Um, remembering correctly. Um, and he kind of falls into like a bit of a rut. Like he's sleeping in, he's reading, he goes on walks, and
Like he's kind of ignoring his parents as well, something like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And he doesn't
Mhm.
he doesn't want to like date women. He thinks that he like feels like, life. It seems as if he thinks that the lives of people at home are a little bit frivolous, and so when he thinks about like getting a partner who he's going to spend a lot of time with, he doesn't really seem to be too excited about it.
Yeah.
um and I guess the crux of the story ends with this conversation over breakfast that Harold has with his mother, where um he There's this kind of weird scene. Did anyone else find the scene with him and his sister a little weird? It just felt a little weird to me.
I don't. I,
Yeah, it was a bit funky. I just attributed it to some like old timey sibling shit.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Um.
it was giving me a little funky vibes when I read it.
Yeah. So here's the lines.
hmm.
Um. I can pitch better than lots of the boys. I tell them all you taught me. The other girls aren't much good. Yeah, said Krebs. His last name is Krebs. Harold Krebs.
Yeah.
I tell them all you're my beau. Aren't you my beau, Hair?
Oh.
You bet. Couldn't your brother really be your beau just because he's your brother? I don't know. Sure you know. Couldn't you be my beau, Hair, if I was old enough and if you wanted to? Sure, you're my girl now. Am I really your girl? Sure. Do you love me? Uh-huh. Will you love me always? Sure. Will you come over and watch me play indoor? Maybe. And then the conversation kind of dies off. It just
Yeah.
feels kind of weird. Um, Again, like
Well.
Luke said, might be a little old timey, and it also might be like he's obviously not really like interested in her, even if it is meant that way, because like he's not interested in dating anybody. He says that before.
hmm.
So even if it is like, they're being weirdly playful, he's definitely not being serious. So there's that.
Yeah, that was. I completely forgot about that part. Now I'm very unhappy that I now remember that part.
Yeah, it was just a
Yeah.
little weird. Not it was not the point of the story, so like I guess just move on. But I felt a little weird reading it. Anyway, so the mother sends his sister away, and they talk for a while. He kind of agrees that, uh, or I guess first she asks him like what kind of plans he has, and he's like, I don't really know. And then she's like, "Oh well, God has a plan for everyone. It's there can be no idle hands in His kingdom." And Krebs says that he's not in His kingdom,
Oh.
and basically that he doesn't believe in God. And his mother talks about how he's worried. She's worried about him, and the father's worried, and you know she's gonna um another guy about his age has a good job and is gonna get married. Um and then there's some more like kind of it feels a little bit like a lecture. And then his mom's like, yes, don't he's like, is that all? And she's like, yes, don't you love your mother, dear boy? And he says no. And then she starts crying, and he
Yeah.
says, I
I don't
don't
love
love anybody.
anybody. Yeah.
um and he looks at her and he realizes she's hurt, and so
Mhm.
he tries to back up and be like, I didn't mean it. um and she's like, she doesn't he's like, can you believe me? And she doesn't believe him, clearly. And then she just goes, all right, I believe you. And
Mhm.
then they kind of have a little bit of a heart to heart, and she prays for him. And then she's like, pray. And he's like, I can't. And she says, I'll pray for you, basically. And she prays for him, and then he leaves to go watch his sister play indoor baseball, I think. And he's thinking like, oh, I'll just do it to make other people happy, so there's no fuss.
Hmm. Yeah. Now that you read back to me, I'm like, I think this might be a story about like post traumatic stress disorder.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
I'm
definitely a
not sure.
story.
I don't know how I messed up that.
Yeah, it's definitely a story about PTSD. I think more than anything, it's a story about the Lost Generation, written by
Mhm.
someone from the Lost Generation. I'm not saying like someone from World War II or some other war couldn't have experienced something similar, but it certainly feels like, Harold feels lost.
Hmm.
Frankly, he spends all of his days doing nothing. He doesn't want for anything. He doesn't believe in God. He's lost. And
Hmm.
he thinks he he's struggling to find his way. Um, and I think if nothing else, like, yes, obviously this is a story about PTSD, and that's an excellent thing to look at and take away from it. But also, Um, it's a story about understanding the Lost Generation, I think, a little bit better.
Interesting. Yeah, yeah, you're right. At first, I just thought it was a neat, like, just like, oh,
It's a
but
neat little story about a soldier coming home.
oh no, no, no. Okay, well, NEET is just like basically just a siphon on the family. No,
Hmm.
no employment, education, or training. But now that you kind of put that in perspective, I'm like, oh, now I feel really bad for that interpretation. My initial reaction to the story, and
Yeah.
yeah, sorry for that. But yeah, now the story is a little bit more tragic than dark. I wasn't gonna say it was funny, but I was just like, wow, this is like kind of just sad and just
Hmm.
miserable. But now there's actual meaning to it. It wasn't just like senseless sadness.
Right.
Um, yeah, the fact that he came home from war is actually very important. It's something that I kind of glossed over. I was like, oh, that's just part of his background. Luke, is this your second favorite story? It's like in the middle because I think it was all our middle favorites, right?
Yeah, it was my middle favorite. I mean, Pierce kind of got everything I liked out of it already. I don't have anything really new to add.
What the ending with the mother?
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah,
Hmm.
he leaves it ambiguous for a reason. It's like, oh, is it cured? Is he gonna actually commit to it? But we don't know.
I don't think it's very ambiguous at all, actually, frankly, just to just to completely contradict you for a second.
Okay.
It seems like he just, to me, it's pretty clear that he's, no matter, I guess it is like ambiguous if he's going to get better or not, but I don't think
Yeah.
that really matters. I think the point of the story is that he's going to do what his mom wishes for him, no
Yeah.
matter what, just to not cause like a fuss, just so people aren't upset, because he
Yeah.
doesn't really care either way.
Okay. I agree. Now I agree. Yeah. I'm just looking at the Wikipedia page. There are a couple symbols we could talk about, but symbolism on a podcast. Why?
Yeah, we're not
Yeah.
close. We don't read that close.
Yeah.
I
The
definitely
map
don't.
is a symbol.
I mean, yeah, it's obvious. He just wants to
The
map out
map.
his life.
Yeah, he was looking for direction in his own life.
Oh, when he's in home, it's like he's sitting in the trenches. Technically, that's a reach. That's not cited.
The
That's
final symbol is the photograph at the beginning of the story. It shows Kreb and his fraternity brothers all wearing the same thing, showing conformist mentality of pre-war Midwestern America.
none of these are cited. So grain of salt.
This one actually kind of makes sense to me because he was a conformist before leaving for war, and then he went
Okay.
to war, and he no longer wants to fit into the box
Oh,
that
yeah, that's
his
interesting.
mom puts him in. I don't know if that's a symbol as much as just a
An
further
arc, like
read. Yeah, but
how about his name, Harold Krebs? Harold is an old English name meaning army power or army ruler, and then Krebs is crab in German. Did you know that, Pierce?
I did not know that.
Now you know.
They don't have many. They actually don't have many like nice speeches in Germany. So when you're learning German, they don't. Crab is not the first thing that
Okay.
they teach you.
Um,
um,
yeah. I didn't. Well, I mean, you could assign that. I mean, okay, I'm gonna assume that that was kind of intentional because it doesn't hurt to think it's not intentional. Because like, I thought that crabs, they walk sideways. They're useless to society. They're cretins. But no, apparently according to Wikipedia, this unsighted source, it's like it's a metaphor for his crab-like shell that he gained from the experience in war, which I like my interpretation better.
eh, I like. I think the symbols in the story are actually pretty good to look at generally. At
Okay.
least the symbols that are listed here. I don't see one that I like. Ooh, I don't see any that like are
Yeah.
so far off. So
But
of what my
remember,
interpretation was.
cite your sources.
Yeah. It's kind of hard to cite sources with symbolism though, to be fair.
Okay. Well, we should get to the last story. Our favorite story, or two of us, 2/3 of us, the majority of
Ev-
us is favorite story.
A clean, well lighted place.
The greatest short story of all time.
One
One
of
one of.
probably, I think, according to us and also James Joyce.
Yeah.
Um, I actually wrote. Well, I didn't write an essay. I did a presentation over this
Oh.
short story in high school.
Oh.
So I already knew a bit about the deeper interpretations of it.
I remember I read this before. I think on an unreleased episode of the podcast.
Yes, yep. Because
You're
I
not you're
told
not
you
getting that
to.
episode.
Because
Do you yeah.
you said you hated Hemingway, and I was like, or you didn't get it, and I was like, come on, read the short stories, and I sent you this one.
Yeah.
Um, well, anyway, so it's late at night in a Spanish-speaking country of some kind, probably Spain. Maybe not. I don't know. I would imagine, or Cuba, maybe. I don't know. Whatever. It doesn't matter. It's a Spanish-speaking country. Um,
For one important
there,
reason, because you'll find out.
yeah, there's an old man in a cafe that is very well lighted and clean,
Mm.
and he's like a good client. And he comes in and he drinks, and then until they close up, and then he leaves. And there's two waiters talking to each other, and they're talking about how he tried to commit suicide the week before, and they're talking about like why. And it's one waiter says he was in despair about nothing because he has plenty of money. Um, and then they have another short conversation about this soldier and a girl he's with, and then
Mm.
the deaf man calls for more alcohol, and the waiter gives him another glass. Um, and then he rudely says, "You should have killed yourself last week," which the deaf man, of course, doesn't hear. And then they go back talking to why he would kill himself. He tried to hang himself. His niece cut him down. Blah 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 blah. And I say blah blah because I'm just trying to speed it up.
Yeah.
Uh, they talk about what might help him, a wife, something else. Um, he calls for another, and then the younger of the two waiters who wants to get home. He said he wants to get home to his wife. He says that he can't have another, even though they don't close up for another hour. And the other waiter's like, "Why are you kicking him out? We don't close for another hour." And he says that the older waiter says that you have youth, and confidence and a job. And he says, like, I am of those who like to stay late at the cafe, with all those who do not want to go to bed, with all those who need a light for the night. And so the older waiter likes to keep it open for people who need it. Bodegas and bars aren't the same. The older man, they both leave. The older waiter is walking, and he starts reciting the Lord's Prayer, but he replaces a bunch of words with nada.
Hmm.
It was all nada y pues nada y nada y pues nada are nada who art in nada. Nada be thy name, thy kingdom nada. Thy will be nada in nada as it
Blasphemous.
is in
Ooh.
nada. And he ends up at a bodega. He gets a little cup of something. And he complains about how the light's good, but it's not clean in this bar.
Hmm.
And then he leaves and he goes to bed, and he is not able to fall asleep until the morning. And he says, "Oh, it's only insomnia. Many must deal with it." But yeah, I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts before I.
There's so much packed into so little words. Okay, this is like the best example of iceberg theory, because what may seem just like about like just a simple conflict between two waiters and then deaf old man who doesn't want to leave, or just comes to he's like a regular at this cafe, but underneath the surface is just like, oh, it's him musing about life. The young waiter is kind of rude because he's inexperienced, and it's not Hemingway condoning his actions; it's him condemning the actions because the older waiter calls him out on it, and it's not viewed to be very nice. And it's framed in a way that it's like, oh, he's just very just rude, inexperienced in life, and he just has no manners and no chill really. And the older waiter is just like, man, calm down. He's lived a rough life, and basically just the best part about old age is that it just doesn't last long. And he's just trying to do his job the best he can, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, and then they start kind of like passive aggressive arguing about like, oh, we should have taken care of him. We should have not. And then I forgot what they're talking about, but they also brought up religion in a way, and the fact that he used nada, meaning nothing in Spanish, and the prayer is low key kind of blasphemous because the words that it replaces are just have to do with religious context, like direct religious context. Like I think God and heaven are all replaced, and this the fact that the old man saying it just proves that the old man's a nihilist. He's seen so not the old man, the older waiter is a nihilist. He's seen so much, and he just he just wants to give the world its fair shake before he goes. And the cafe is kind of it's a refuge from that the emptiness of life. But Luke, what did you think?
Yeah, I mean,
This was his least favorite, by the way.
this is
We
my
Yeah.
just
least
gushed about
favorite.
it. And
And it's my least favorite not because I didn't like it, but I just thought it was so boring and forgettable.
Okay.
we're offended.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm guessing you're not a guy that's focused on symbolism or the deeper context of it, because
I mean, it's nice if it's there, but I kind of need the story to be interesting first.
yeah, I mean, yeah,
So the reason why I think A Clean, Well Lighted Place gets a pass for me for like plot being so simple is because it's 4 pages long, if
yeah,
that. I've seen
Mhm.
an edition where it was 2 pages long. Um, it just depends on font size, really.
yeah,
Um, and so like the with a story that short, it can really be about anything, and then the importance is just what the author is trying to pull your
yeah.
attention to, whether it's like prose or meaning or symbolism or whatever. Um, and for me, the meaning in A Clean, Well Lighted Place is so strong and prescient,
Prescient.
prescient. Um, it's just really kind of in your face, and then there's still stuff below that that it hmm um
That kind of makes up for the lack of
yeah
plot.
that it makes up for it. um Now I'm going to try and talk about the deeper meaning that I talked about in my class. So the first most obvious thing is that he's a nihilist, and the night and darkness is symbolic of nothing, of nothingness, of the nothingness that is
Life.
life, right? And so the clean, well lighted place is a place that brings order to that. Um,
I would say
and so
refuge, maybe.
there's, I would disagree because it kind of pushes it away, right?
Okay.
It pushes away the nothingness, the light does. Um, and even if you want to say it's a refuge, I would then argue that there's a description of it in which it talks about the light being cast on the leaves and the leaves casting shadows
Hmm.
on the um, on the cafe,
Oh.
and that to me means that um, the reading that I would take away from it has less to do with an orderly refuge, order bringing refuge to nothingness, and more a question of like kind of bringing meaning to life almost. Because
Okay.
more of like a not necessarily uh, absurdist nihilism, which is like realizing that life is absurd and like finding meaning anyway. That's a
Mhm.
super simplified version of it, but that's basically what it is. Not necessarily that, but just like the idea that um, life is meaningless, and the world is meaningless, and that's the darkness symbolizes that. And then the cafe being able to bring meaning into that. Um, and then there's also a bit that I would think about like, if the light also symbolizes order, then is the darkness the obvious opposite of that is chaos? And then is there, you kind of need a bit of both in order
Yin and
for
yang.
the place to really be nice. Um, for the clean, well lighted place to really make sense.
Mm,
If there were no windows and therefore the darkness couldn't get in at all, would it detract from the clean, well lighted place?
interesting.
Um, so there's like a lot to it, and there's a lot to think about. And I think for this story in particular, there's a starting place to go down, which is orderly and or the light being order and refuge. Um, and then you can kind of go in a million different directions and really pull your own thing from it, um, from that starting point.
Um, Luke, do you have any? Did you get all that?
I got it, man.
Okay. I mean, do you have any remarks about do you have any symbols that we have not? I mean, we're not even a third of the way through the story yet, but do you have? We didn't even get to the beginning, it was just the light. But
Well,
do you have
no,
any
I
symbols?
this is like that's kind of the thing. Like my thing was kind of
Yeah.
um the whole thing, and you can pull the darkness being nothingness just from like he says nothing over and over again when
Yeah.
he's walking in the dark, and it stops in the bodega, and obviously he doesn't do it in the cafe.
Mm,
So it's I didn't point specifically everywhere in the short story, but I kind of pulled from a lot of places.
yeah. No, that is a valid. Yeah, that's a valid interpretation. I'm just like, I do think it's a refuge because it is bringing order because the deaf old man he's loved his life, he has a disability, he's already grown tired of life, and he just goes to the cafe just to get a drink, just basically. And I think it's described as him just like staying for there for hours on end, and I know he stays up late, and then before he has to get pushed away or kicked out. um but he always comes back because that's why I think it's a refuge from the chaos. And outside in the world, he's committed suicide, and his wife already died, and the only thing that's taking care of him is his niece, which I would like to believe, which I guess the niece is also saving his life because after a suicide attempt, he kind of just saved. He cut him down. She cut him down, which I mean, I guess now that we're going to attribute more symbolism, I'm guessing every single woman in the story is kind of just holding them back from the mundanity of life or the chaos of life, something like that. It's keeping them down and grounded. And I think the young waiter wants to go back to his wife because there's love there. And I think the older waiter does. I think his wife passed, I believe.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
the
So
the, the women in the men's lives are keeping them from feeling the meaninglessness.
yes, and ultimately committing suicide. Well, I guess the older waiter's not there yet. Um, and but he does feel like it's bound to happen eventually. So when it happens, like he empathizes with the deaf old man. And I I don't remember what the older waiter does, but I know that the younger waiter kind of takes advantage of it, tells him to leave, tells him very rude things, tells him to kill himself, which should not do. Listener, do not
Yeah.
do that.
Don't do that.
Yeah. So basically, I think him being deaf is just like, um, I think it's a sign of just old age. He can't hear any warnings or anything good about life or anything bad about life. He's just like a passerby in the world. And when the younger man, basically, he's just down on his luck. And I can keep on going, but like that's kind of the gist of it. There's more. Luke, do you have anything?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I'd
yeah,
agree
the whole
that.
I didn't really like. Wasn't thinking too deep about it. Wasn't
Hmm.
really that interested in it. I got nothing, man. To me, the story was about a old dude and and like a dick waiter, and he was depressed and old, and his wife was dead.
Yeah.
Surface level, yeah, okay. On surface level, the story's kind of bad and boring, but I think it's because it's so ambiguous. It calls attention to the deeper meaning of what he was trying to do. So, um,
I and I will say, like, we brought up the thing about James Joyce saying this is one of the greatest short stories ever, because James Joyce is such like a everything
antithesis.
has a deeper meaning. Not necessarily. I don't even think he's necessarily the antithesis to Ernest Hemingway. He is like different. He's got a different style, definitely.
Yeah,
But he is. I'm sure he loved this story because literally the whole thing was just a front for a deeper meaning.
yes,
And James Joyce, like everything that he writes, has like a million different
yeah.
interpretations you could
You have to
make
read an
of it.
annotated copy.
You
I've
gotta
not read
have
Ulysses
like
yet.
you gotta have like I saw online there was a reference book for Ulysses that was just as long as the actual book.
Yeah,
It was like around the same number of pages.
does not surprise me.
So yeah, I'm sure that's why James Joyce loved it. But I guess to say one last thing, I think I'd agree with you that that the cafe and the light is supposed to be a refuge.
Hmm.
But the thing that I was trying to say was like, why is it a refuge? Like, there's a
Okay,
deeper
yeah,
reason. Like, yes, for those people, it is a refuge. And I was trying to get to the root of why is it a refuge? Like Hemingway has a reason that this place is a refuge for them. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Um, and
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't have anything else to say. I think we've covered as much ground as we can,
mhm.
possibly. It's like it's a great short story if you are into symbolism and all that stuff, which Luke obviously is not.
He is
Um,
not. That's true. This is.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I love symbolism when you can there are multiple interpretations of it. And we can discuss it like this.
Mm.
Um, but I guess Luke is the odd man out here. It's
Yeah.
a hot take.
Luke, every time we talk about Hemingway, you post that meme of Squidward staring out the window at SpongeBob and Patrick running.
Yeah. For
How
once,
the
we're
roles have
SpongeBob.
reversed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's me. Like, "Oh, what are you guys wait, I like this guy too, guys. What do you
Yeah, and like this is the weird exception to the rule because I am lukewarm on Hemingway most of the time.
Yeah.
Again, not my go-to author. But honestly, I might get a short story collection just because like this is pretty solid.
Mhm. Um, and with that, I'll say follow us on Twitter at Not Just Any Pod. You can find information on this podcast as well as the other one.
Not just an
Um,
RPG.
yeah, Not Just Any RPG. If you're interested in tabletop role playing games, check that one out. Um, please join us next week for the actual episode, the book club episode
Yeah,
on Hemingway. Um, all three of us have read two of the books that we're going to be talking about.
yeah,
So
and I've read one of them twice.
yeah, and he didn't like it either time.
Yeah, out of spite, I
So
read it again.
yeah, join us
uh,
for that. Should be a really good discussion because we've
and
all
rate
read
us,
them.
make us happy.
Yep.
5 stars,
Follow us.
nothing less than 5 stars.
Yeah. I think that's it.
Yeah, we always say that. Yep. Goodbye, Prometheus.
Oh my god, you forgot.
guys